Every spice explained in 10 minutes. Black pepper is the dried fruit of the Piper nigrum vine, indigenous to the Malabar coast of India. In 410 AD, Alaric the Visigoth besieged Rome and demanded 3,000 pounds of black peppercorns as part of his ransom. Green, black, and white pepper all come from the exact same plant, merely harvested at different stages of ripeness. White pepper is simply black pepper soaked in water for a week until the outer black flesh literally rots off the seed. The chemical piperine provides the sharp heat. A widespread historical myth claims medieval cooks heavily seasoned their food with black pepper to disguise the taste of rotting meat. This is categorically false. Spices were a luxury item reserved strictly for the European aristocracy. The wealthy did not eat spoiled beef. Saffron consists of the dried stigmas of the Crocus sativus flower. The word derives from the 12th century Arabic term zafaran, translating plainly to yellow. Alexander the Great bathed in warm saffron water in 324 BC to heal battle wounds sustained in Persia. It takes tens of thousands of hand-picked blossoms to yield a single pound of the spice. This labor intensity kept saffron entirely within the upper economic class. Counterfeiting the threads was a highly lucrative criminal enterprise. In 15th century Nuremberg, the Saffron Show Code dictated that selling adulterated saffron was punishable by being burned alive. Modern food fraud relies on less fatal methods, routinely substituting dyed corn silk or safflower threads. Most restaurant paella is yellow strictly from food coloring. Cinnamon arrives from the inner bark of tree branches native to Sri Lanka. The ancient Egyptians imported it by 2000 BC specifically for use in the embalming process. In the 17th century, the Dutch East India Company aggressively monopolized the Ceylon cinnamon trade, enforcing the death penalty for any colonial subject caught selling a single, unauthorized stick. True cinnamon, Cinnamomum verum, crumbles like thin parchment paper. Most cinnamon sold in North American grocery stores is actually cassia bark. Cassia originates in China and is structurally rigid enough to break a human tooth. It carries a harsher, more abrasive flavor profile. Cinnabon and other commercial bakeries rely heavily on cassia for their pastries. True cinnamon is rarely used in mass production. Asafoetida is an oleoresin extracted from the thick taproot of a giant fennel plant native to the deserts of Iran and Afghanistan. The Latin etymology translates literally to stinking resin. Raw Asafoetida carries the pungent odor of concentrated sulfur and unwashed laundry. The Mughal Empire introduced the resin to the Indian subcontinent in the 16th century. It quickly became an essential staple for Jain and Brahmin communities, whose religious dietary laws strictly prohibit the consumption of alliums like onions and garlic. When dropped into boiling oil, the harsh sulfur compounds rapidly break down, yielding a savory, aromatic profile indistinguishable from sodded leeks. Raw asafoetida must be kept in a tightly sealed glass container. Otherwise, the entire kitchen smells like a gas leak. Nutmeg is the inner seed of the Myristica fragrance tree, originally found only on the tiny Banda Islands of Indonesia. The bright red webbed aril wrapped around that seed is harvested separately and dried to create mace. In 1621, Dutch Governor-General Jan Pieter Zoon Koon ordered the massacre of the Bandanese natives simply to secure a total global monopoly on the nutmeg supply. By the 18th century, carrying a personal silver nutmeg grater to dinner parties became a defining status symbol for the European bourgeois. The spice contains myristicin, a psychoactive compound. Consuming more than 2 teaspoons of ground nutmeg in a single sitting induces severe nausea, dehydration, and prolonged hallucinations. Holiday eggnog is lightly poisoned. Sumac is a tart, crimson powder ground from the dried berries of the Rus coriaria shrub across the Middle East. Prior to the agricultural introduction of Asian lemons by Islamic traders in the 10th century, Romans relied on sumac to add an acidic bite to their meals. Both Lebanon and Syria actively claim the spice as the defining foundational ingredient in the creation of fatish salad. Centuries before the Plymouth colony was established, indigenous tribes in North America soaked the berries of a related sumac species in cold water to produce a sour beverage resembling pink lemonade. Poison sumac is a completely different plant boasting white berries. Eating it causes fatal respiratory failure. The distinction matters. Turmeric is the boiled, dried, and ground rhizome of the curcuma longa flowering plant, native to the Indian subcontinent. The English name derives from the Latin terra merita, translating directly to meritorious earth. For centuries, European merchants marketed the yellow powder strictly as a cheap, lower-class substitute for saffron. In 2015, the Kraft Heinz company faced intense public pressure and removed artificial yellow dyes from their flagship macaroni and cheese. They replaced the synthetic coloring entirely with a blend of paprika and turmeric. The primary active compound in the rhizome is curcumin, heavily marketed by the modern wellness industry as a powerful anti-inflammatory agent. This marketing deliberately ignores a massive biological hurdle. The human digestive tract naturally metabolizes and excretes 99% of raw curcumin before it ever enters the bloodstream. Unless consumed alongside black pepper, the powder is biologically useless. Golden milk lattes do nothing. Grains of paradise are tetrahedral seeds from a herbaceous plant in the ginger family native to West Africa. During the 14th century, this spice flooded European markets as a cheap, peasant-class substitute for wildly expensive black pepper. The entire coastline of modern Liberia was formerly labeled the Pepper Coast on 16th-century maritime maps, strictly due to this booming export. In 1798, King George III explicitly banned the use of grains of paradise in British beer and gin. The monarch genuinely believed the seeds caused temporary madness. The ban lasted well over a century. The spice offers a complex profile of cardamom, black pepper, and citrus. Today, it survives primarily as a botanical in Bombay Sapphire gin. Cumin is the dried seed of a slender herb in the parsley family, originating in the eastern Mediterranean basin. Both India and Mexico heavily rely on the spice for their foundational dishes, though Spanish conquistadors were the ones who introduced cumin to the Americas in the 1500s. During the European Middle Ages, superstition dictated that cumin possessed the power to ensure fidelity. It was routinely baked into bread to prevent the theft of baked goods from windowsills. Feudal soldiers marching off to war carried a loaf of cumin bread baked by their wives to guarantee they remained loyal during campaigns. The chemical compound responsible for the distinct earthy aroma is cuminaldehyde. It is exactly the same primary odor compound secreted by bedbugs. The Sichuan peppercorn is the dried, rusted husk of the prickly ash shrub, grown extensively in the mountainous regions of central China. It is entirely unrelated to black pepper or chili peppers. The husk does not actually produce heat. It creates a tactile neurological illusion. The chemical compound hydroxy-alpha-sanchule physically binds to touch receptors on the lips and tongue, generating a 50 Hz vibration. This is the exact frequency produced by touching a low-voltage battery. The United States Department of Agriculture strictly banned the import of the spice from 1968 to 2005. Federal authorities feared the husks carried a citrus canker capable of devastating the Florida orange industry. Smuggled peppercorns were a lucrative black market commodity for 4 decades. Cloves are the tightly closed, dried pink flower buds of an evergreen tree native exclusively to the Maluku Islands. In 206 BC, courtiers serving the Han Dynasty in China were legally mandated to hold cloves in their mouths when addressing the emperor. This practice spared the monarch from enduring their bad breath. By the 16th century, the spice had reached Europe, where a single kilogram of cloves commanded the price of 7 grams of solid gold in London. The buds contain massive quantities of eugenol, a potent natural anesthetic. Professional dentists regularly utilized concentrated clove oil to numb the gums of patients well into the 1900s. Piercing a baked holiday ham with whole cloves makes the meat nearly impossible to slice.